It's a celebration here in the studio because the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast is a winner. Thanks to the Cybersecurity Excellence Awards for awarding us a Best Cybersecurity Podcast gold medal in our category. Yeah. We're celebrating, but we're giving all of you the gift. We're once again giving away a free month of our Infosec Skills platform, which features targeted learning modules, cloud-hosted cyber ranges, hands-on projects, certification practice exams, and skills assessments. To take advantage of this special offer, for Cyberwork listeners, head over to infosecinstitute.com/skills or click the link in the description below. Sign up for an individual subscription as you normally would. Then, in the coupon box, type the word Cyberwork, CYBERWORK, no spaces, no capital letters, and just like magic, you can claim your free month. Thank you once again for listening to and watching our podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you coming back each week. So enough of that, let's begin the episode. Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week, I sit down with a different industry thought leader, and we discuss the latest cybersecurity trends, how those trends are affecting the work of Infosec professionals, while offering tips for those trying to break in or move up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. Today, we're talking to Fang Yu, CTO of the fraud detection platform DataVisor. Along with her DataVisor co-founder, Yinglin Shi, Fang started in the Microsoft Cybersecurity Research Department before the two started their company. Fang received her PhD degree from the EECS Department at University of California at Berkeley. Her interests center on big data for security. Over the past 10 years, she has been developing algorithms and building systems for identifying various malicious traffic such as worms, spam, bot queries, faked and hijacked account activities, and fraudulent financial transactions. Fang has published many papers at top security conferences and filed over 20 patents. Product-wise, she has helped different online services combat large-scale attacks with multiple success stories. DataVisor's customers are an impressive bunch, and they span the likes of Alibaba, Pinterest, LetGo, most major U.S. banking institutions, and some of the largest Chinese insurance companies. Fang, welcome to Cyberwork today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So I always like to start every show by asking our guests how and when they got into computers and tech. So I wanted to ask you that, but I especially want to know how and when you got interested in this specific aspect of security, working with and rooting out malicious traffic.
Sure. Yeah, I got into interest in computer science very early on. I remember I started programming when I was in elementary school, third grade. So I've been interested in that ever since. Especially for the cybersecurity, I think I got more interested in that in my PhD study, where I actually work on the deep packet inspection for the network security in UC Berkeley. And then afterwards, I graduated and joined Microsoft Research, where I actually work a lot on the helping Microsoft virus services protect against the fraud attacks.
Right. So what was the appeal of that? Is that just sort of something you naturally transitioned to, or was there something specifically interesting to you about sort of being this sort of guardian against these sort of bad actors?
Yeah, so the attack to actually detecting attack is actually pretty complicated and pretty complex. So it's actually very intellectually challenging, and also it's actually a very, very important task, because without that, I think everybody, including every end user, will be actually affected. So that's actually a very, very important thing.
Okay. You mentioned a little bit, but tell me about your transition from working with the Microsoft Cybersecurity Research Department to co-founding your own company. What was the impetus to take your ideas and expertise and use them to start your own organization like that?
Yeah, so in Microsoft, I was actually a part of the research department, but we help many product teams to fight against various type of attacks. As a Microsoft is pretty big, I have many different services. There are constant attack to Microsoft services. For example, we work with the Hotmail spam problem, and then the bot queries, and then the payments, the Xbox, etc. Whenever we saw a problem, we always analyze a problem and have a solution, right? And this type of attack, what kind of a solution would be best defense against all these type of attack? So we have a lot of these kind of solutions, but over the time we feel I would call it like a whack-a-mole approach. So you see the mole actually coming out, and it actually have this type of implication. Then you actually whack it. But in the end, you see tomorrow it actually come up with a different way. Then you continue whack it. So it's endless,
that's cybersecurity.
And then at the end of the time, we figure out all of these attacks are actually connected. Right. Because nowadays you are not actually having someone physically stealing a credit card to actually swipe it. We still have those, but it's relatively small scale.
Yes.
The more important problem is actually those professional attackers. They have actually network. Someone is specializing in getting the proxy IP. Someone is specializing in getting the data breaches, etc. Then someone actually put together the thing and to attack. So it's very important to actually find the root of this problem. That way, I find it's actually the account problem. So we should actually capture mole at the mole hole, rather than actually wait for them to actually get born and it grows, and then we start tracking it. Because at that time, it's always late, right? And because we don't know which hole it will come out later.
Right.
Yeah, so that's actually initiate the whole initiative of me and my co-founder. Actually, we want to build something brand new and grand opening, and then want to actually have something to actually capture the things before they start to attack, and also capture things at the root rather than chasing different attack pattern at the end.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. So you're sort of developing this entire sort of holistic system that, that goes beyond sort of the immediate the problem of the day, and that I love that whack-a-mole analogy. That's really cool. So yeah, I want to know a little bit more about the actual tools here. Based on your bio, it says that your primary area of expertise was the creation of algorithms and building systems, as we were just talking about, for malicious traffic detection, and that you filled 20 patents for many tools. Can you tell me about some of your creations, sort of in a technical way? I know our listeners would like to know sort of how these tools work and how you came up with the ideas for them.
I see. So yeah, we have many patents actually in DataVisor, but one of the things that actually is pretty unique about DataVisor is actually our unsupervised machine learning approach. Capturing fraud or attack is a little bit different from all the other methods, right? People actually have rules-based systems, and I think audience must be very familiar with machine learning as well. It has been so hot, right? Mm-hmm. In machine learning, you need to give it labels, supervised machine learning, and then you can train a model to actually detect things. But in anti-fraud or anti-cybersecurity, you don't have much labels. Even you have it, it comes months late, because when there's a credit card fraud, then you actually add a month late and say this is bad, or it's somebody default, it's actually months late. By the time you train a model, then it's already late, because on average, from our experience of global intelligence that we analyze, most attack patterns actually change within a few days. Sometimes aggressive one even changing within a few hours. So with that, what we developing DataVisor, very unique to us, is unsupervised machine learning. That is able to capture attacks without actually the training data, relying on training data to constantly retraining. So it's able to identify new patterns on the fly. So this is actually our very unique.
Yeah. And that's the first I've heard of that.
That's right. So at the very beginning, when we actually start the company, we talk about unsupervised machine learning. Very few people actually heard about it, and it's actually so foreign concept, because people think, why it actually even work, right? But today, I'm very glad that with all the markets actually start to realize unsupervised machine learning is very important. For example, Gartner even saying that by 2020, a large percent of enterprise must have unsupervised machine learning. So the essence of why it works is that because of these attackers nowadays, they are professional organized crime rings, and they actually not only attack one account, they usually either create multiple accounts or have compromised many accounts, because one account has a limited financial gains. So they want to capture a bunch of them and remotely control these accounts to either get a credit card, or actually starting for stolen credit card to actually starting transactions, etc. So they don't actually, each card account don't have to be a lot of activities, but collectively they can still actually have a large amount of the financial gains.
Right.
So to detect this type of distributed, highly sophisticated, evolving attack, we really need to zoom out to actually not looking at a single user perspective, how this card actually look like, and then how this but we need to zoom out, see what are the patterns of these ones, and are there any coordinations among these patterns? Because we know the attackers, because they want to make profit, they need to actually control a large amount of a group of accounts. And do we see any abnormal, fraudulent patterns from the coordinated way? So that one is actually the essence of unsupervised machine learning. So it needs huge amount of computation, because for any of the single event coming in, you're no longer actually looking at a single event anymore. Rather, we're looking at this user's all activities, and they're correlated with all the other users. So able to do that in real time is actually, system-wise, is actually very challenging, and it's a hard task. But at the moment you have a system able to do that, the benefit is also huge. We are stepping one level up, and able to oversee the whole population and identify the new patterns actually coming up. So that's really one of the inventions that we are really proud from DataVisor, able to have that capability and able to detect things in real time with very, very high precision. We're not saying this is suspicious, but rather than we detect this is actually bad. This is actually something that our client can directly action upon.
So what is, I guess I'm that's fascinating, and I'm just curious what is the scope of what this unsupervised machine learning is looking at? Is it looking like completely globally? Because I'm just trying to get my head around, like, if you have a client and and they're trying to use your device to sort of like keep them safe, like what is your unsupervised machine learning tool looking at? Is it looking at the entire world of transactions somehow, or is it like just looking at like one big enterprise's thousands and thousands of nodes or whatever? I guess I don't know what I'm asking.
But. So we can actually protect one enterprise at a time, but globally, currently in DataVisor, we are protecting 4 billion user accounts globally.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
And trillions of events. So we are actually very, very high skill. For each client that we actually protect, they can put in different events, for example, all the logging events, all the transaction events, and then the more event they add on, the more protection we can protect. Okay. And we are also very proactive. Many of our attacks, we can actually capture them even at the registration time. When the account got registered, we know this account is actually bad. So prevent it from conducting bad activities moving on.
Okay, that's that's amazing. I'm going to immediately after this interview going to go back and look all at your company's website. I'm so curious about all this, but that's great. So the purpose of the CyberWork podcast here is we like to sort of give our listeners some career advice and sort of give them a sense of what different types of jobs are like on a day-to-day basis. So I was wondering if you could walk me through an average day for you as a CTO at DataVisor. How's your day structured? Like, when do you get into work? How much of your day is spent on planned tasks? How much, how long before everything turns into emergencies and you have to put out fires for the rest of the day? Things like that. Do you spend a lot of time working with clients, or do you actually still work with like the tools and the things like that?
Yeah, so on my day, regularly I got into the office around like 9 o'clock in the morning, so it's a very normal day. And then I do a mix of things. I still work on the algorithm, the system part, and we also, one of our key goal is also helping our clients. So we actually also see what the emerging attack there is and what kind of fraud trend is. So we actually have a small a research department on top of all the attack, and then we actually publish the quarterly fraud index report. It will actually globally, we have a topic to say what are the for example, the incubation period, when they actually create account to the attack. What are those incubation periods look like? If the attacker actually create content, what does the content look like? And then, for example, and also comparison of different sectors. What are the sectors attacking for example, the financial institutions versus the social properties. What are the differences? So we publish quarterly fraud index report on all of those, and I think for anybody interested in that, you can go to our website to download those.
Yeah.
And then so we do the fraud research, and then we also helping the client to solve their real world problems. And then so we have a wide suite of products. Not only the unsupervised machine learning that I talked about, this is actually our the flagship product, but we also have a lot of other things like for the data collection, the SDK product, to the feature platform that actually able to allow analysts to real time create a feature and then real time backtest a feature and immediately put it into production. The live ops capabilities is also very important for us and also for our client. And also the advanced rules engine that is able to, based on the new patterns, that able to write the rules to deploy and backtest and monitor the rule effect. And one thing beyond the rule engine, I think most people think it's pretty fundamental now, right? So many people actually have it. The other kind of uniqueness of a DataVisor is that we can automatically generate rules. So by the unsupervised machine learning, seeing what are the text happening, and it's able to summarize a pattern and automatically suggest a rule to actually put in. So we have automated rules engine able to everyday generate a lot of rules and able to retire the rules that is no longer effective and then manage those rules. So we want to have a different layers of a protection for the supervised machine learning, for the unsupervised machine learning, for the rules, everything. So it's a mixed suite of the product that we provide for the client.
Okay, well that's really interesting. I've talked to a fair number of CEOs and CISOs and CTOs who, they get to a certain point in their career, and the thing that they love doing in security, actually getting in there and dealing with threats and things like that sort of gets pulled away from them, and they just find themselves, just in client meetings or just sort of dealing with these macro level things. But it sounds like you still have a pretty good balance between working with the client and getting what they want, but also you're still really on the front lines in terms of like making things in the way that you were when you first started with the company. Is that the case?
Yeah, of course, we have a very talented teams, and I work with the team, so it's not me alone, and it's actually together with the team. So we have, as I said, we have a research department, and we also have a lot of talented engineers. For us, to building the unsupervised machine learning and all other systems, it actually needs a lot of system effort as well. I would say the success of the product is three aspects. The first is algorithm, how to actually run unsupervised machine learning, how to run supervised machine learning very well and effectively, algorithm aspect. The second aspect, very, very important, is system aspect, because in today, everything is big data. You have we have billions of events coming in every day, and how to actually handle these events in real time. So it's a lot of system challenges, and for us, everything is distributed. So how to actually handle this each task distributed high efficiency. So that's also a very challenging task. And the third part is actually the domain expertise. So it's not like something that you can apply off-the-shelf models to fraud detection. That we need a lot of domain expertise as well.
Okay, so your bio noted that you had multiple successful stories of combating large-scale attacks. Can you give me some examples of your tools and algorithms preventing major disasters? Do you have any cool war stories that, or things that could have been like disastrous, but you helped save?
Yeah. So there are multiple of those. I think I'll probably give two examples. One in different industry. So the first example is for financial institutions in terms of the credit card openings. So in the credit card account, I think especially in US, the current method of detecting the fraudulent account opening is pretty broken. This is actually because of all the data breaches we had in the past. So I think all of the good users' information, for example, where they live, what's their past employer, what's the street address, all of those information are at the attacker hands. So they can actually impersonate all of these like legitimate users with very high FICO scores. Then they just go pretend to be these users and apply for credit card. It's very hard for the financial institutions' existing model to distinguish this is a true user versus this is a false user. If you want them to do a lot of ID verification, etc., it's also very not user friendly, right? So it's so that system is actually currently under attack. Moreover, I think the fraudsters are even more creative to actually create the synthetic IDs. For example, someone don't even exist, or some actually really young children, they actually get their social security number, start to incubating a profile, and then pretend to be these persons. So all the things that they actually now can have multiple cards, and at the end they will actually get a card with a large like a credit limit, and immediately use it, and then will be gone. So
that is a long game right there.
Yeah, exactly. They are very patient, and then incubation takes years sometimes to create
unbelievable
fake identity. So so what we are actually protecting them is actually identifying these fraudulent application right at the actual application time. So identify all of this, and this is actually part of the bad application, and these are not correct user, although their credit score appear to pretty good. So that's something that we help actually multiple financial institutions to actually save their the fraud loss, because each credit card can have a large credit limit. That's actually some of the real fraud stories that we actually help prevent. So another case is that for the social kind of client, I want to give is actually the account takeover. One of our clients that the fraudsters, I think they did a large attack at the Thanksgiving time, though it's actually most people are off, and it is tried to attack the client with different logins. And then the attack is actually pretty distributed. So if it's actually coming from my IP address ranges, etc., it's actually pretty easy. But for this particular attack, it's actually going through I think we kind of suspect they actually go through the IoT device across the world, because they all claim to be iPhone, but it's actually the pattern actually coming from, it's not really iPhone. I think it's emulators from the IoT devices. So they appear to be very, very global attack and try to log account take over my client's actual account, and we kind of block those. And it's very interesting. Initially, when they actually blocked them, they saw this pattern, and then quickly they actually evolve the patterns, or how they actually when they first actually if they go through, they will do certain things, but if they the second one, if they go through, they will actually incubate. So to pretend to be actually inactive, and then because immediately actually getting in, they do things, it's very clear signals. So we see different kind of like migration of the pack patterns within some of them actually very, very quickly. And then for this scale of attack that we help the client to actually block, it's a large, multi-million of accounts that actually help them protect against these type of sophisticated attacks.
Okay, so that leads perfectly to my next question here. You've been working with these types of malicious traffic types, bots and worms and spam and hijacked accounts and credential, hijacking and so forth for more than 10 years now. Can you talk about the ways in which these security headaches have changed and grown more sneaky and complex over the years? It sounds like 10 years. It's almost a completely different game. But what was it like in 2010 versus now?
Yeah, in 2010, I think we still I think we start to see more of this sophisticated attack, but not as much as now. I think now it's almost all industry are affected by these sophisticated attacks. And then the amount of sophistication is also increased quite a bit. I mean, before, if you look at it, 2010, probably at that time, it's mostly through proxies, etc. Sometimes they even have their own IP ranges. But now, with a lot of them actually going through data centers, I think afterwards. But now, I think there are two things that we are seeing the trend. One is the new data centers are actually coming up all the time
Okay.
with the kind of advancement of cloud computing. There are
Yeah.
always data center actually coming up, and so there are a lot of some provide the ground for the fraudsters, but
Yes.
our fraudsters are also very moving forward and using distributed botnets. So those are actually a little bit harder to detect because these are the normal users ranges, right? They have a
Right.
normal users on top of it. And then even more sophisticated, we are seeing that I think by the 10 years ago, although their adoption of the two-factor authentication is actually low, right? But people think the two-factor authentication can block most of attack. But nowadays, I think two-factor authentication is actually more prevalent now, I think. But still, attackers are able to even bypass two-factor authentication, either change the phone bindings or sometimes even hijack the signals from the verification code and able to conduct those. And we are seeing a lot of the simulated traffic. So they have the attackers also very sophisticated now that we see those modern pools with fully programmed. So what they actually need is actually just like these small devices, this little port there, and each one needs a SIM card, and then everything's actually connect to it, and they can simulate an app. And then do all kinds of actions, and then we have multiple co-programmed things to actually pretend to be thousands of apps, and everything actually goes through the VPNs to be actually distributed. So in that way, they can massively generate application level of attacks, very mimic to the normal user traffic. So we are seeing them actually applying a lot of new techniques.
You mentioned that. Did I hear you say that the cloud, that sort of the mass migration to the cloud, has that sort of changed the playing field? Has that made things harder to track or stay on top of?
Yeah, so the cloud, is definitely making things harder because there are a lot of VPNs actually setting up on the cloud, and we cannot say every traffic from cloud from AWS is actually bad, which is not true. Right. Because there are legitimate VPNs actually going on there from those cloud providers, and then also we actually even find sometimes the corporate or even some security browsers, they redirect the traffic to the cloud to scan there to perform some security scanning, and then redirect the traffic out from the cloud. So there are a lot of ways that the cloud could actually generate legitimate traffic. So we cannot have using the cloud as a blacklist, although some clouds actually, they could be actually the attackers going there to set up their computational resource there.
Okay. So that's going to be something you probably is not going to be solved anytime soon. Like that just sounds like that's a huge problem.
Yeah, so that's something that we require to actually have all kinds of signals, right? You cannot just rely on a traditional blacklist, say this cloud provider, this range is bad. We actually need to taking that as a signal and combine with all the other signal and have a way of detection.
Got it. Okay, so I want to go back a little bit to your career journey and sort of apply it towards people who are listening who might be interested in doing what you do. So can you tell me a little bit about, it sounds like you love your job, like you get a lot of really interesting, war stories and things that you do, but what are the parts of your job that you love the most and, get you excited to start a new week? And are there any parts that you dread having to do each week?
That's a good question. So for us, I think it's building, every week we are actually building a lot of new product and have a client solving the problems. So every week I'm actually very excited coming to work and to talk to the different, the clients and the product and see how our product actually solving the real world problems for them. And if any feedback or missing, what are the things that we actually need to build next. So that's actually a very exciting part of the building things, solving real world problems. They're all also kind of things that you need to do a little bit like admin work of things. I think I do actually much less. When we started the company just near the inland 6 years ago, we used to do a lot of actually I would say kind of technical job, for example.
Right.
loyally those that incorporate the company and all of those things, right? And
you're wearing 6 or 7 hats probably at the outset. You're doing everything, doing the accounting.
Right. But now I do much less of those, but sure. it's part of the journey, and we learned quite a bit along the way.
Yeah. So that's a relief. Sometimes I talk to people out here who are like, I'm up at 2 a.m. and I can't sleep and there's emergencies coming in at 3. So I'm glad you've hit a point of equilibrium there. But again, the purpose of the podcast is to help people who feel that they're interested in cybersecurity but might not know where to get started, feel like they have some ideas and options about where to begin their research if they're looking to change. So if our listeners were interested in doing the type of work you do, fighting malicious traffic and attackers in the cloud and elsewhere, what are some skills, experiences, educational milestones, or certifications that would help them get a leg up in your industry?
I think that's actually... So if depends on what kind of role you want to be. I mean, for example, in us, we have different roles, right?
Right.
But I think it's very, very important actually have for anything like who is interested in engineering to have a very solid engineering background.
Right.
I mean, here I think a lot of people are actually interested in machine learning, and then also the like the deep learning part of those are actually very important to us. As well, but I think for it's for everybody. I think for most people I now interview, almost everybody have a like deep learning kind of resume. I see a lot of other from the students, but I think there are 2 things I think it's also important, equally important. One is the system skill, because in terms of the amount of data that we need to deal with now. It's not something that, for example, Excel sheet can work, or even like SAS, like those like MATLAB and those kind of very statistical like analysis tools can help. We really actually need to build distributed programming on top of it. So the system knowledge and distributed programming is actually very important. I know that not many schools actually take very basic system courses like operating system, networking as a mandatory now. But those information are actually very, very important for both like building up the cybersecurity knowledge from the part that actually to really implement these, because it needs to actually have a lot of system knowledge. Of course, machine learning is actually also very important to actually because the amount of work you cannot rely on a human. And the third part is actually the domain knowledges, right? Getting into this. This is a little bit hard for, I think cyber is not so easy either. I think for cyber and the fraud, usually this need a working experience at the companies. So for the company that's actually interesting, like the detecting, looking at all of these, we can from this experience of looking at different attack, then these knowledge actually can get gathered, right, and then able to say these are the patterns. And then it's also very, very important not to be too narrow, because if you're only, for example, looking at the DDoS attack at one particular institution, your mind probably is occupied with whatever the possibility that the things actually can attack. For our experience, I really actually value our Microsoft experience to actually let us start a company, because in Microsoft research we work with different product teams, so we see the attack from different perspective and have understanding what it look like. Of course, in DataVisor now, because we are protecting so many different clients, that knowledge is actually a lot, because we see here how they actually attack one client, what are the common patterns, what are the newest patterns actually into different sectors. But that information, I think it's a little bit hard for all of people to actually get at the schools.
Yeah, sure.
Welcome to join DataVisor.
Okay, all right. You heard it here first. Everybody, polish up their resume and get ready. So yeah, I want you started to answer my next question here, and maybe you answered it fully, but I want to just sort of re-ask here. So you said that when you were working at Microsoft, one of the big sort of useful things that happened was that you got to see the attack from all these different points in the process or whatever. Were there, because I know a lot of people work, a regular security job at Microsoft, but very few of them actually, make the jump to making their own, founding their own company. So were there certain hands-on experiences you had either at Microsoft or elsewhere in the security realm that helped you move along the path where you were, now? Was there a certain project you did there that sort of, made your knowledge jump, exponentially or whatever, where you're like, aha, now I see it?
It wasn't any particular one, but as I mentioned, it was more at the, me and my co-founder were at Microsoft for 7.5 years.
Yes.
So over the 7.5 years, we work on a lot of systems, and then we find at the end it's more whack-a-mole approach.
Right.
And then that really actually drive us to say, what if we actually want, because we're researchers, right? We want to build something grand, and I want to be actually one level ahead of all these attacks. And so that's the main drive, and say we do not actually want to chase all the existing attacks anymore.
Okay.
Rather, we actually want to build something next generation able to detect. So that was actually the main drive. And seeing all those patterns, and we feel the pain of actually the whacking the moles, right?
Yeah.
And then that actually drive us to build something generic that no matter which client, because every client have their uniqueness, right? The data is different, the tag is different. So that drive us really actually to abstract out and then build something generic and able to conduct things that when you come, we can quickly turn online instead of having a customized solution for all our clients.
Okay, so it really was the point of seeing that, like, there was a completely different way of thinking about it. You were seeing where you were, just dealing with the problems as they came, and you said there's got to be a better way, and you found a better way.
Yeah.
I love it. So one of the topics that we like to cover at CyberWork, we've had a number of guests on to talk about this, is the importance of finding new and diverse professionals to join the cybersecurity industry, especially women, people of color, and differently abled. Can you tell me a bit about your experiences and or setbacks as a woman who had to fight her way in a very male ingrained industry?
Yeah. Me and my co-founder, actually, when we grew up, we didn't feel at least the education we had was actually pretty supportive of the woman. And we didn't feel that we are special as a woman, that actually we cannot do things that the man couldn't do. And then also the work that we actually do is actually pretty technical as well. And then at the kind of a lot of our peers are males, but we also have a good female populations in our research community. So that part, we never feel lonely as a woman researchers or woman co-founders.
Okay.
By being that, and when we started the company, so when doing the hiring, we really actually don't take into any pre-assumption when we want to hire a female engineer versus a male engineer. To us, it's all based on the fit, whether there is actually a good fit between us and then the engineer. So if you talk about the woman's ability, in many cases, actually, in the analytics field, that actually sometimes the women's actually could be actually even more like analytical, and then be more careful and patient in looking at the attack patterns. So I don't see much drawback at all.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, one of the reasons, a lot of people think, well, you're just trying to tick boxes or this or that or the other thing. But the more sort of points of view and the more sort of different types of capabilities you have on your team, especially something like this where you're problem solving from so many different directions, it seems like it's really important to have people who have, if women have more of an analytical or a patient approach, then it's good to have that in addition to other skills. And if you listen to everyone in the room, then you get a number of sort of, complementary voices that might point out, gaps in thinking that you might not, otherwise, think to look for.
Right.
Yeah. So what tips would you give to women entering the world of security right now? Are there any sort of pitfalls that you've been able to sidestep over the years that you would pass on?
Yeah, I think it's just don't think yourself are anything special. I think don't overthink that you are kind of a
Sure.
woman or anything. You just you are regular people, and then I think everybody actually can do the work equally well. That's where we actually grow up and then educated, and then and then just focus on the work and then really go deep. I think
Mm-hmm.
to do any work well, I think we need a technical ability to go deep and then dig the thing to find the true findings or develop the good. So everything that just do your just focus on the work itself, and then
Right.
also I think the woman part is that there are a lot of actually other women leaders out there, and then so you can if people are actually interesting, they can actually follow other women leaders, and
Right.
then so there is actually a community out there, and don't feel lonely.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And there's lots of great kind of online mentoring programs, and we talked to the Women's Society of Cyberjutsu recently, and that's a great organization that is matching up women and mentors and so forth. So as we wrap up today, where do you see the task of dealing with these sort of types of traffic, malicious traffic like bots and worms and cyber nuisances? Where do you see it all going in the next 5 to 10 years? You've been doing this for over 10 years. What can you sort of look at the next 10 years? Where do you think it's going to go next?
Yeah, I think the next 10 years is definitely more on the computation and on the able to automatically discover patterns. That's actually very, very important for cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is a little bit different from the traditional things like, for example, so if, for example, you look at the image recognition, right? You recognize a cat versus a dog, right? Or this thing, a cat and dog look like 1,000 years pass by. The cat is almost similar what they look like now versus 1,000 years ago. The shape doesn't greatly change. Right. But for cybersecurity and fraud, not even talk about a year, even like an hour ago, what the next hour is going to be very different.
Yes.
So sure. I think what we really want to actually emphasize is able to discover new patterns automatically and then discover it very, very precisely. I think there are a lot of tools actually claim to be able to discover new patterns, but it's actually generate so many alerts, and people actually say, I cannot actually even handle this alert. I still need to actually manually go through and tell me what among these, what are the two alerts I need to action on. So so I think the automatic discovery of new patterns is super important. The second important part is actually the precision. So you want to precisely detect the attack and not much of what's positive. That's something very important to actually for the able to action upon the result. The third one is actually the explainability. I think for so many like a machine learning or deep learning, people say this is actually something that's suspicious. But how you explain why this is actually suspicious, right? Yes, yeah. What is this? The rules is very simple, right? You define the rules and then you say this because of these features, it is actually bad. Right. But for supervised machine learning, why is it actually bad? So for us in DataVisor, we actually have a full suite of like the reason codes explanation, the UI for the actually to explain. That I find is super, super useful for our client to actually really pinpoint. You tell me this is actually fraud. First, tell me it precisely. Second, tell me the reasons. And I want to understand the reasons and see whether it actually makes sense or actually I can follow. So I think these three are actually very, very important in the next 10 years of the algorithm development of all the solutions that you need to do these. In terms of the systems in the next 10 years, I think it's also very, very important to have a super scalable systems.
Okay.
And then it's so that's something that we actually try really hard to actually distribute every single computation of us so that it can be super scalable. It's actually very interesting that we work with some of the largest clients, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes the system and the security attack and the fraud attack, they have waves of attack, right? When that's going to a huge wave, the existing system cannot keep up because of the latencies, etc.
Sure.
And then fraudsters actually use that because they know when I send a large amount of the attack, your system not able to bypass it because you cannot make the QPS. Then you will actually shortcut the circuit and just say, I just let these traffic through, so that all the fraud attack actually can go through. But when we actually help the client, we are able to have a very resilient layer of the computation, able to spin up the more cluster in the wrong time, and it also have a very low latency of computation. So under such a situation, you are still able to have very predictable worst case scenario of the latencies, and that's also one of the key points for the fraud detection or even cyber, that we really actually want to have the very high scalable, predictable, and able to handle high spikes. That's absolutely key.
Wow, that's a lot to work with in the next 10 years. I'm glad you're on the front line keeping us safe here. So Fang Yu, thank you very much. Oh, one last question. If our listeners want to know more about you and or DataVisor, where can they go online?
Sure. Our website has www.datavisor.com, DATAVISOR.com, and you can also email me at fang@datavisor.com.
Perfect. Oh, that's awesome. Fang Yu, thank you so much for your time today. This was really, really fascinating.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sento, and great talking to you as well.
Okay, and thank you all for listening and watching today. If you enjoyed today's video, you can find many more on our YouTube page. Just go to youtube.com and type in Cyberwork with Infosec to check out our collection of tutorials, interviews, and past webinars. If you'd rather have us in your ears during your workday, all of our videos are also available as audio podcasts. Just search Cyberwork with Infosec in your podcast catcher of choice. For a free month of the Infosec Skills Platform, which you heard about at the start of today's show, just go to infosecinstitute.com/skills and sign up for an account like you normally would. And in the coupon code, type Cyberwork, all one word, CYBERWRK, no small letters, no spaces, to get 1 free month. Thank you once again to Fang Yu and to DataVisor, and thank you all again for watching and listening. We will speak to you next week.